Thanks for coming out. We'll get started. John Scott, did John Scott do a hive inspection?
Yes.
Who's out at the hive? Anybody? Who's out at the hive tonight? Want to give a report? What'd you see? Were they alive? That's the primary thing. Did you find out anything we weren't aware of? Doing pretty good. Population looked decent. Who else was out there? Yes?
Beautiful brood pattern.
Beautiful brood pattern. You know what that means? You need to know what that means. Okay, good to know. So how many frames of broods?
We told one that was just maxed out. It's like
Woo! Okay, so are we splitting it? What's the plan going forward, do you know?
I don't know.
Okay, all right, well, we'll find out when he gets back in. So, we had our nuke building workshop at the beginning of the month or something. It was a great success. There were some wonderful pictures. Did we post those on our Facebook page, the pictures?
I haven't seen it yet. I don't know if we did.
We took a bunch, I know the core group took a bunch of pictures, and I will tell you, the women were outnumbering the men. So I'm just going to say, men, you might need to be more constructive. So, nuke building workshop was a huge success. He's not here today. A week from Saturday is the Bedford Bee Intensive down in Bedford. If you haven't been to that already, they work really hard on making that very hands-on beekeeping. They bring hives into the 4-H fairgrounds there in Bedford and have them all set up so your workshops are getting into beehives. It is not lectures. It's not sitting in lectures. The price is very reasonable and it includes a good lunch and they have raffles and all that. So if you're looking for a day of beekeeping, I'm sure there is. I'll try to look that up at the break and have it for you. Bedford Bee Intensive. You can just Google Bedford Bee Intensive because I have, but it is the 27th. May 11th on Saturdays when Kathleen Crow is coming to go through our hive tier. Kathleen Crow is the state apiarist, the bee inspector. She is not the bee police. We ask all of you each year to please utilize her services. We ask everybody every year, please utilize her services. She is 100% free to us as beekeepers. She's not a police officer, and if we don't keep her busy, we always worry that budget cuts might look her direction. So please utilize her, come out and be here when she goes through the hives. You can get an idea of how great she is to work with. Just a really worthwhile free service for you as beekeepers. That's on May 11th. From 1 to 3, and I know it's going to be really punctual because she's coming in from out of town just to be here for that. So be ready with your suit and your gear at 1 o'clock. Master Gardener Plant Sale, May 18th. I think there's a lot of native plants and it's going to be a good plant sale, and that's at the Hamilton County 4-H Fairgrounds.
Yes.
And it's a huge thing, right?
It's huge.
Huge.
14,000 to 15,000 plants.
Okay, that's a lot. Cash only, or I'm sure not?
No, everything cash. We do take cash, but check or credit card also.
Okay. There is going to be a Cool Creek Park plant sale, and I'm sure we'll be able to post when that's coming up.
I think it's ongoing. I think you just communicate with the Nature Center here, and if they don't have it in stock, from what their internet says, they'll order for it.
Oh,
so it's just communicating with the Nature Center.
Our local,
but it's natives as well.
Park that provides for us. So absolutely, Jeanette, raffle items for tonight.
Okay, raffle items tonight. We have some wonderful things. A medium box. It doesn't have frames in it, but a medium box. A hat, a shirt, 4 tomato plants. There are different kinds of tomato plants. Some rhubarb, a honey sieve. What you put your honey through when you're bottling. Wonderful smoker.
Wow.
It's really a cool smoker.
Wow, that's like Avengers level smoker. Right?
Yeah, it's nice. A bee candle holder.
Cute.
There's a candle in it, complete with candle.
Wow, okay.
And a little cute little purse.
And what's
and a Warray hive.
We're raffling that.
We are raffling the Warray hive.
To go home tonight.
go home tonight.
Holy cow, text your friends. Okay. Wow, okay. How many people were in their own beehives today? Every single one of you better put your hands up. You can still pretend.
All yeah, ready to go.
Okay, so how many people were in your beehives today? Yesterday, yeah, yesterday was good as well. Yeah. Absolutely, last 28 hours, excellent. Did anybody have a surprise? Was it all pretty what you expect? I had late spring dead out. I didn't find out yesterday, I found out last week, but all 4 had made it through till February, and then the big one done. And there was activity going in out the top, and I was like, that doesn't seem right. Sure enough, the next day I got in, they were just being dropped out. So, did you have something?
Oh, I got a surprise. I've never seen a small high beetle cluster before.
Want to go ahead and tell us?
Yeah, I had some dead out hives, and so I stacked candy board on top of candy board on top of candy board over the winter.
The princess and the pea method.
Yeah, and so I just got in there today to pull all those off. Well, those layers of candy boards made a perfect little pocket in there for small hive beetles to just flourish. And when I went peeling off those candy boards one at a time, when I got between 2 of them, there was a golf ball sized cluster of small hive beetles that dove down into the hive.
Oh, even better. Nice. Nice.
So probably not a good idea to stack candy boards.
Okay, so my learning there. And I'm supposed to say who is new with us tonight. Anybody new? Yes, sir. Welcome. Thank you. How'd you hear about us? Even better. Bee evangelism. I love it. Thank you for coming. Beekeepers of Indiana. What am I saying about that? Please join Beekeepers of Indiana.
There's the pamphlets over here.
Pamphlets are over there. It is worthwhile to join. They have quarterly
Information.
They have quarterly events, and here alone is the reason. So I'm just going to say that their field day up at Purdue is accidentally on the same day that we're having our sustainable apiary. So I hate to tell you to go see their field day, but what I will tell you is their fall meeting is going to be in French Lick. I believe it's Halloween weekend, and the speaker is going to be Randy Oliver from California, whose website is scientificbeekeeping.com. If you haven't heard of Randy Oliver, you should make it a point to read about Randy Oliver and read his stuff because he is amazing. We've never had him in Indiana as a speaker. I've always wished that we would have him at the Bee School. So to get it for our fall meeting is a huge coup, and you should definitely plan to go. Not only is French Lick beautiful at that time of year, but to hear Randy Oliver speak is totally worth what you will spend to go. So Beekeepers of Indiana, one of the benefits of being a member of the state organization is you do get a price reduction on these events, and that money goes toward funding those kind of speakers to come in. So please look into the fall meeting for Beekeepers of Indiana. Our Sustainable Apiary event, as I said, is June 15th, which is the same day as the Purdue Field Day, the Purdue Bee Lab Summer Field Day. Our Sustainable Apiary will be out at Teeter Farm again, and it was what we used to call Nuke Fest, and what it's all about is teaching you how to keep your apiary self-sustaining, so you don't have to buy bees every year. Not that we don't want to support our vendors in our region here who provide us with those opportunities, but just to teach you that all levels of beekeeper can make a nuke and keep a nuke and know how to use it and why you want to have it. So our Sustainable Apiary is also June 15th. Is lunch included? Do you have those details somewhere?
All your photos from the new building are now on.
Okay, so the really great photos from new building are on our Facebook page. So
Why does it keep flipping?
I don't know what happened there, but
There.
this is what's coming up. Oh yeah, our speaker at Sustainable Apiary is Disselkoen, who is a nationally known speaker, and he speaks on mechanical methods for mite treatment. So for people who just really don't want to use any kind of chemical treatment, which those are all varied, Mel's method is very time intensive. Would you call it that? Time intensive?
Yes.
More mechanical method of preventing varroa overtake by manipulation of your queen and brood cycles. And am I saying that adequately? Okay. Anything else? feel like I forgot something. Oh, David Berndt has something to talk about regarding CEBA, right?
Yeah, just quick announcement.
Absolutely.
Next, May the 20th, down in Central Indiana, which is at Holiday Park, we have a special speaker comes up from Kentucky. His name is John Berndt. He's going to talk about reading frames for colony assessment. And he's going to include in that recognizing bee diseases and how to handle it. So I thought it might be of interest to some of you guys if y'all would like to come. Of course, y'all invite.
And that is May the 20th. That's your regular club meeting. What time does it start?
Starts at 6:30, and he's going to go an hour and a half. So.
Okay, and where is he from?
Kentucky.
Oh, great. Great.
BAS Master.
Okay, so let's have a good presence at CEBA. That would be great. Is there anything else I'm supposed to talk about? Oh, our Jumpstarter candidate, Danielle, is here, and she's going to tell about her hive inspection today. Danielle and her daughter, Bronte, got one of the packages that Barry brought up, and John Scott installed that for them since we were out of town. And so we got in your hive today. Tell us what you saw.
Yeah, so we did find the queen right away, actually.
I was super excited.
Super excited.
It was super excited.
Yeah, we had our co-pot of using the
Oh, so they had a feeder came with their kit for the 4 jars that stood on top, the 4 cart, a really nice little feeder. And so when we transported the hive over and set it up, they filled it. I had brought them Honeybee Healthy, and they filled the feeder, and we left, and it was all good. And I texted her and said, hey, have you looked in on the feeder? And she said, yeah, they haven't taken very much. And I said, yeah, that's probably about normal because there's stuff outside. And she said, I hope I got it right. It was a tablespoon of Honeybee Healthy to a gallon of water. And I said, yeah. And then I was like, did you put the sugar in the water? Did you put the sugar in the water? She was like, no. I was like, totally fine. They're hydrated now. That's good. But also sugar in some water. We'll try again. So we did that. So we were in there today to take out the agar strip.
Yes.
And pull the frame out, and there she was. Figured it out. I told her I've been through probably 2 whole seasons of never seeing a queen before I saw one, and we saw it, and it was great. So, thank you. All right, anybody else? Anybody else have something exciting they want to tell us? Nope? Nope? Okay, good. What's next?
Jeanette?
Oh, Jeanette?
Yes.
You're up, ma'am.
Okay, just a second.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, well, I'll fill it
What's that?
Oh, please do, because I don't know the details on that.
I don't know.
We have more nuke boxes to sell, is that correct, Jimmer?
We do.
We have nuke box parts, and we have
Unassembled.
already,
Unassembled.
they're all of them are unassembled.
No.
Okay.
We have 4 that are assembled, and we have parts for many, many more.
About a dozen.
About a dozen.
And what are we selling these for?
$20.
Either way, assembled or unassembled.
$20. If you don't want to put them together, we got 4
$20 nuke boxes are available from Mr. Berndt. So they're actually in the back room. We have, oh, Jeanette, I'm sorry, Jeanette's the money handler. So $20 for a nuke box or nuke box parts, up to you how constructed.
Sure. Okay. I didn't do a title slide, but what this is called house bees. I discovered that evidently some of my bees have swarmed, and they found a wonderful place in my house to
This is hilarious.
make their hive. And they've been there for a couple of years, and I knew about it, but I wasn't sure what to do about it because I've always heard of cutouts where they pull the siding and everything off the house, and that's not what I wanted to have happen to the house. So then I was at a state bee education committee meeting, and I said, hey, what should I do about this? And they gave me the name of a gentleman who's a member of CEBA, Ross Harding is his name, and said he will come and take care of it, and you'll never know he was there. So I said, all right, we'll give it a try. Okay, so that's the house. Okay, Here is where the bees are. And something to notice is that the house is cantilevered. So there's about 2 feet there between the bottom and the top. And the close-up here, the bees were coming in.
You have a pointer at the top.
They were coming in, I'm sorry?
The red button's a pointer.
Oh, the red button, okay. They were coming in right around in here somewhere. Okay, so we figured that they were, you know, inside, whatever. So, what we did is he had a heat imaging device. And first thing we did, and I did a picture of this, is go into the living room, which is directly behind this. And he ran it around and we didn't find anything. Ran it around the ceiling, we didn't find anything. So next thing we did was we went upstairs. The room above this is a bedroom. It does have a carpeted floor, which was wonderful. Because what we did was, we pulled back the carpet. You can see the carpet is rolled back. Got to the subfloor. He took his heat sensor. It was really fun. As he was going along, he was saying, okay, 65 degrees, 68 degrees, 65 degrees, 82 degrees, 86 degrees. Yeah, so we figured we had it. Okay, so then what they did was just took a saw and cut out that part of the subfloor that you see there. It was a little more difficult than it could have been because evidently when the house was built, the contractor used glue on the, whatever these things are, the joists, right, to hold this down. Okay, but then they lifted up the section that he cut out, and that's what we found. Something to note is that this right here was the former home of some paper hornets. Thank goodness it was former. We might have been there for quite a while. The bees are right over here. And there are some parts of it that are stuck up on that we'll see in a minute. There are the bees. And, okay, so he has a vacuum here, and they scrape the bees off of this. They're, you know, it's like sometimes in your hive when you pull out, for example, your inner cover, there's wax and bees and stuff there. That's what it was like there. Okay. He had a bucket. He got some of the, well, we would call them frames, but some of the honeycombs that had honey in it, and he just stuck it in the bucket. What you see here is the vacuum. He has a bee vacuum, and I think maybe I have a better picture of it somewhere. Well, that's him with it, but anyway, what it is, he has a shop vac hooked up, and then there's a box that has, on one end, the end closest to the shop vac, it has a screened entrance. On the other end, it has a hinge kind of entrance, so when the shop vac is on, that door opens up and the bees can come in. The bees may not like it, but they come in. Okay, so what he's doing here is he's just taking the honey and putting it into a bucket. Oh, there he's cutting out some of the comb from the top of from the board there. You can see there that he's cutting that. You'll see the board is slightly damaged because it was glued to the joist, but not enough to worry about the integrity of it. So we didn't pay any attention to that. Okay, then he takes the vacuum and starts vacuuming up bees. And he vacuumed bees, and he vacuumed bees, and then he vacuumed some more bees. Okay, here is a frame of honeycomb that he's pulling out of that section. And then what do they do with it? Okay, he has frames here, and you see the rubber bands right here. So this is an empty frame, just like for any other hive. And he has put large rubber bands around it. And what he does is he takes the honeycomb and puts it on that, cuts it to size, and the reason he's cutting off this end is there's some brood back over in here, and there wasn't anything out here, so he just cut that out and then made it fit from there. Oh, and if you notice, he is sort of lacking a bee suit. And there were thousands of bees flying around. But he's lacking a bee suit. He said he could work without it. You'll see that he later changed his mind. Okay, so he's putting the honeycomb in the frame and moving those rubber bands around to hold it in place. Interesting thing that they told me is they'll put that in a hive. The box, they call the jail, that the bees get sucked into was this thing right here. And it is the same size, when it's put on its side, as a regular hive box. So what they'll do is they'll put it on its side and open it up with this hive box sitting on top of it that has all of the brood and honeycomb and that sort of thing. The bees in the box will go right on up into that hive, and then they can take their vacuum box away again. And you can see right here on this, it does have a, on this side, I think was plexiglass panel down in there, and then there's screens so that he sucks them in when it's closed up. Then before they left, he pulled that up so that they had air going through to get home. Okay, so he puts that in there like that, and they said that he puts it back into a hive box. And they said that it's very interesting that after a few days, you'll go out to this hive and you'll find rubber bands out in front of it. The bees have nailed the honeycomb down in there. They say they no longer have or want these foreign things in there, so they just toss them out. Okay, this was the size of most of the honeycomb that came out. The board on your left is actually the inner cover. So it was basically twice the size of this. Oh, and something I didn't mention to you, and I should have, was I talked about the house being cantilevered. If you notice that in the previous slides, those bees were in the cantilevered part. And it was interesting because you have the joists that were running like this. But then there's a cross board right over the bottom wall so that it made a very nice box for them. Lovely box. I mean, it was probably about the size of 2 regular deep hive boxes if you put them side, if you change the direction on it. Okay, so they're taking that big one and cutting it and putting it into this. After they got most of the stuff put in the boxes, they turned on the shop light, and so that's the glow that you see. And so they're going in there to try to find the rest, any other bees that are there. One thing that they used was the kind of spray that we spray to clear the bees out of supers when we want to collect honey. And so they would spray it if there was a little hole where these bees would just come flying out. And he was right there with his vacuum to catch them. Okay, this is some extra comb, maybe empty in some cases. It has some drone cells on it like that. And they just kind of stuck that in the buckets. Here he is vacuuming bees off the windows. As you can imagine, if you've ever had bees around, when they come out of a place like that, they're going to go to the light because they think that's where they're going to escape. This window was covered with bees. And so he's vacuuming and he got every single bee. We never, after they left, we never saw another bee in there. Whoops. Okay, so when they left, they filled the cavities, all of those across there that they had opened up, they filled them with styrofoam insulation. The bee cavity is the one that's over here, right there. And so they filled it, and he said that they always do that because if you don't fill it with that, the bees outside will smell the honey and they will find a way in. And if you fill it with that, they'll get in and hit against that and say, well, maybe not. So they filled it with that, then they put the board back down, the subfloor back down, nailed it down again, put the carpet over, attached it to the carpet strip around the sides. The room looks exactly like it did when they started. So I was very pleased with it. So if you get these in your house, I can tell you who to call. They were great.
How many boxes of these?
He only did one completely full box. There were some, bits and pieces of brood that didn't make it in the box because it was too long. But basically one full box. And then there would have been probably half a box of honey if they had put that in. Okay, that's it.
How long did it take?
How long did it take? About 3 hours.
Did you get to keep the bees or?
I did not, I didn't want the bees. I'm sure I could have, no, I have enough bees. I don't want another hive. I have as many as I can take. I'm sure had I wanted the bees, I could have negotiated with them about buying the bees, basically. But getting the bees is part of their fee.
Hi, everybody.
Hello, Jim.
Thank you, John, for humoring me. All right, so tonight we're going to talk about bees and math. How cool is that? There are a few topics that are more interesting than bees and math. And you put them together, and you have truly something that is fascinating in so many different ways. So a lot of times when I talk, I'm talking about stuff that comes out of the American Bee Journal, which is of our available journals out there. The American Bee Journal tends to be a bit more technical, focuses a little bit more on research and some of the sciencey things. One of the other big journals, though, is Bee Culture. Who here subscribes to Bee Culture? Wow, just a couple. Okay. Bee Culture is a great magazine. It's much more focused on the hobbyists. It's a lot more casual, a bit folksy, I guess, but a lot of really good information in it. And this article is actually in this month's issue of Bee Culture, which always comes out the month before. I never understood why magazines are like that, but the April edition comes in March. This was in the most recent issue, and it was kind of tucked away in the back. And I saw it and I thought, oh, that looks interesting, and I started reading through it. And as I was going through the article, he's referring to figure 5, figure 6, figure 7. And I looked and I was like, where's figure 7? And I kept reading through the article and it said, and then for the conclusion, see figure 8. Where's figure 8? So I wrote to the editor and I said, it's Kim Plottom. I said, Kim, I couldn't find figures 7 and 8 in the magazine. And he said, oh, my bad. Here's the manuscript. So what we're going to cover tonight is actually previously unpublished material. Okay, now Siva did get to hear it on Monday. So this isn't the first outing. But,
I think they should pay extra. Everybody should put some money in the pot now.
Yeah, the tickets are double this tonight. So we are going to talk about some things that actually weren't in the article. Truthfully, they're not that groundbreaking, but they're kind of interesting. So we're going to talk about the thermodynamics of beekeeping, which if you have a background in physics, I'm sorry for you, but some of this is going to be a little physicsy, but I promise that it'll be relevant, and there's lots of really good pictures. So let's talk about honey first. Why do bees make honey, right? Well, bees only eat 2 things. They eat pollen, which is where they get their protein and most of their trace nutrients, and they eat nectar, which is where they get all of their carbohydrate, the energy that they use to power everything else that they do. And the nectar comes from flowers, right? But flowers in this part of the world don't bloom year-round. So bees have developed a way of preserving and making sure that the nectar from those flowers is available to them year-round as a food supply, and that's by making it into honey. And what honey really is, essentially, is dried nectar. Okay? Nectar has about 60 to 80% water. It's mostly water. Honey is less than 20% water. At least if you're doing it right, it is. Down around 18, actually. So the biggest difference between honey and nectar, aside from some enzymes and a few things that the bees add to it, is just the fact that the water has been removed. But to do that, to get that water out of the nectar and turn it into honey, that requires energy. And that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. Because the bees' source of energy in the hive, they only have one source of energy, and that is nectar. There we go. All right, before we get into this, the gentleman who wrote this article is from the UK, and if you're familiar with working with sciences in general and in Europe and the UK specifically, they do not use imperial units like we do, pounds, miles, and so on. They use the SI system. And the SI system is in kilograms and liters for what we're going to be talking about tonight. I put this up here because if you're not familiar with it, a kilogram is about 2.2 pounds. A liter is just a little bit more than a quart. But the important part of all of this is right here. A liter of water weighs 1 kilogram. Okay? That's actually the measure of what a kilogram is it's a liter of water. So don't worry about the absolute weights. Everything we talk about tonight is going to be in kilograms and liters. Don't pay attention to how much that actually weighs. Just think about the ratios. Okay? I just didn't want anybody to kind of scratch their head. So let's start out with what is in a super of honey. And the author here said, for the sake of argument, let's say that we have a shallow super of honey. And that shallow super contains 10 kilograms of honey. Okay? Once you extract all the honey out of that shallow super, you end up with 10 kilograms, about 22 pounds. Now he says, if that honey is 20% water, just keep the math easy. Okay? That means that that 10 kilograms of honey has 8 kilograms of sugar and 2 kilograms of water, right? 20% water. Okay? So that's easy enough. And that's what it would look like if you piled it up. Okay? There's 8 kilograms of sugar and 2 liters of water. So, but there's a little bit more to it than that. If you take a look at the nectar that our bees bring in, the sugar content of the nectar varies quite a bit, depending on the time of year, the soil, the amount of rainfall, and the floral source especially. Some floral sources produce a very, very rich nectar. Others produce a very weak nectar. But for the sake of our discussion here, it varies between about 20 and 40% sugar. We're going to assume that we're dealing with 20%, just to keep the math easy again. So everything we talked about tonight, when we talk about nectar, we're going to be referring to 20% sugar solution. Everybody with me so far? Just nod your head even if you're not. I'll explain later. Okay? So each 1 kilogram of sugar from our nectar comes along with 4 kilograms of water for a total of 5 kilograms. 20%, right? So if it's 20% sugar, every kilogram of sugar has 4 kilograms of water with it. All right, so if you're thinking now in terms of how much nectar does it take to make 10 kilograms of honey, to get those 8 kilograms of sugar in our 10 kilograms of honey in our shallow super, it's kind of like the frog on the log, the frog, things like that. Okay? For every 1 kilogram of sugar that comes from nectar, that comes along with 4 kilograms of water. So if we need 8 kilograms of sugar to make our super of honey, that requires collecting 40 kilograms of nectar. Okay? And that's what 40 kilograms of nectar. So that's essentially the volume that has to be dried down by the bees in order to make that 10 kilograms of honey in our shallow super. That's quite a lot. But wait, there's more. Okay? Evaporation. This is the removal of water from the nectar that the bees have collected. So they have to remove 30 kilograms of water from that nectar. You start out with 40, right? You're going down to 10. That means you've got to get rid of 30 kilograms of water. That's a lot of water. Who here likes to cook? Any cooks? I love cooking. And anytime I see something in a recipe that says, add a bottle of wine and reduce by half, I know I'm going to be there for a while. Because it takes a while to boil off half a bottle of wine in a sauce. Same thing with the bees. Okay? It takes them the same amount of energy to get rid of a liter of water in the hive as it takes you to do that on the stove. Okay? Energy is the same. It's just where it comes from is different. On the stove, it takes about 0.6 kilowatt hours to change 1 kilogram of water into vapor at 100 degrees C. That's the boiling point of water. Okay? That's a lot of energy. Now bees, they don't have a stove. Okay? They do it by lapping the nectar with their tongues, by heating the air around the nectar with their bodies, and by fanning the nectar with their wings to keep moving dry air in and moist air out to carry out that moisture-laden air. In the hive, it takes about 0.67 kilowatt hours to change 1 kilogram of water to vapor at 40 degrees C. That's a little low, actually. It's a little warmer than that in a hive. But rough approximation, it works fairly well. So the bees are actually expending a little bit more energy than you have to at your stove in order to evaporate that liquid. So where does all that energy come from? Okay, it's not like they have a gas main they can turn on. Okay, they don't have a circuit breaker in the bottom of the hive for electricity. Their only source of energy is the nectar and the sugar that comes from that nectar. So they would need 20 kilowatt hours of energy to change that 30 kilograms of water into vapor. So that's the amount of energy they have to put in order to get all of that nectar down to a super full of honey. Well, if their energy comes from the sugar in the nectar, and if sugar contains 4.4 kilowatt hours, you still with me? Of energy, go back and read the article. And if sugar contains 4.4 kilowatt hours of energy per kilogram, then they need 4.5 kilograms of sugar to generate that 20 kilowatt hours of energy. So that's how much fuel they need to produce that much energy so they can evaporate 30 liters of nectar to get down to 10 kilograms of honey. Okay, so let's go back to our nectar, okay? 20% sugar nectar, right? 22 kilograms of nectar contains our 4.5 kilos of sugar. So they need that 22 kilos of nectar to fuel the evaporation of the other nectar that they've already collected. So if you take the 40 kilograms of nectar we needed in the first place, okay, add to it the power bill of 22 kilograms of nectar to fuel the whole evaporation process, now you need 62 kilos of nectar in order to produce that 1 shallow of honey. Okay? Okay, we'll come back to this number, by the way, a little bit later, 62. But you ask, what about thermal efficiency? What about thermal efficiency? This whole thing assumes that the system that we're operating is 100% thermally efficient. They are bees, after all. That's right. You know, our cars are not 100% thermally efficient. Our houses aren't 100% thermally efficient. And neither is a beehive 100% efficient. Actually, if you look, it depends on what the outside temperature is and what the hive is made out of. Those are things that are going to have the biggest impact on thermal efficiency. And as it turns out, a wooden beehive at temperatures like we have, they're moderate temperatures, is about 50% efficient. So if you have a 50% fuel efficiency, that means you have to double the amount of fuel you're using in order to evaporate that water. So the 40 kilograms of nectar that we have to make our honey, plus instead of 22, we now have to add 44 kilograms of nectar to fuel it, twice as much. That leads us to 84 kilograms of nectar. So this is the volume of nectar needed to make that 1 shallow super of honey. No wonder they're so tired. Okay? So if you think about the total energy bill for the hive over the course of the season, and this is a bit of an extreme example because the author said, well, let's say you have a hive that produces 100 kilograms of honey in a year. Anybody have any 220-pound hives this year? Yeah, next year. Okay, I didn't either, but we'll just go with it. If you're producing 100 kilograms of honey a year, you're going to have an energy bill, the bees are, of 400 kilowatt hours at 50% efficiency to evaporate all that nectar. That means they're going to need 900 kilograms of nectar just to fuel the evaporation. That doesn't count what it takes to actually make the honey. This picture here, this is a 900-liter tank next to a person. It gives you an idea of how much nectar has to be brought in by the bees just as fuel for the other processes that are going on in the hive. All right, now this is the exciting part, because we're getting to the graphs. Okay? And as techie, geeky people are wont to do, you see this relationship start to form between efficiency and nectar and honey production, and you start plugging in different numbers, and you start to see these relationships, and you go, oh, I'm going to graph that. Good. And so what you have here on the x-axis on the bottom is differing nectar concentrations. And over here is our nectar to honey ratio. And these lines vary based on how efficient the hive is. Okay? So if we think about the example we've been using, and we say, okay, let's talk about 20% nectar. That's what we've been using, right? If we assume that the hive is 100% efficient, then we follow it up there and over to this axis, and we come up with about a 6-to-1 ratio. Anybody remember how many kilos of honey, of nectar we needed? 62. 62, right. So 6.2 to 1 is about the same, okay? Now, if we go with 50% efficient, okay, you see that you have to go up a lot higher on the scale. You end up with 8 to 1. That's a big difference. 6 to 1 to 8 to 1. Okay? Kilos of nectar to make a kilo of honey. Okay? Now, if we're going to go with this. Oh yeah. If the bees are foraging on a little better pasture, and let's say they're pulling in 30% sugar nectar as opposed to 20. Not that big a change. Okay? You see that your 8 to 1 on the 50% line, we were up here, we cut it in half. Okay? Now, the reason a 10% shift in nectar concentration doubles the amount of honey is because if you look at the spacing between these lines, you'll see this is a logarithmic relationship, and you can work out the math on your own, but it works. So, increasing the quality of the bee forage can have a huge effect on how much a hive is capable of producing. All right, now one thing that we haven't factored into all of this whole energy budget is this element right here. Because the nectar doesn't just appear in little tanks in front of the hive, does it? The bees have to fly out and get it. So if you now assume that the bees have to fly, let's say 6 kilometers round trip, 3 kilometers out, 3 kilometers back to get that nectar, what does that do to the whole process? What you see now is your 20% nectar solution at 50% efficiency has a 14 to 1 ratio. Okay? So for every 14 liters of nectar, you can produce 1 kilogram of honey. All right, so what do we learn from all of this? And I'm warning you, I'm getting to the end here, and I'm also getting to the part where I diverge from the author a little bit. So I'll add my editorial comments at the end. But the author claims that improving thermal efficiency is one of the better things you can do for your hive production. Because if you can make your hives more efficient, then they can have a better conversion ratio of nectar to honey. That's really what it comes down to. They can either produce the same amount of honey by foraging further, or they can produce more honey by foraging at the same flowers closer in. Okay? But thermal efficiency is very critical in his opinion. It also, there it is. However, this is one of my editorial comments. Note the relationship of these curves. The distance between 5% efficiency and 10% efficiency is quite large. The distance between 50% and 100% is relatively small. Okay? It doesn't take much to get huge gains at this end of the efficiency scale. At this end, though, it takes quite a bit to make any significant movement. In other words, the difference between 50 and 100% isn't nearly as much as the difference between 10 and 20%. Okay? And that's again because it's a logarithmic relationship. So, if you can forage further to produce the same amount of honey, then a hive either needs more nectar of the same concentration or the same amount of a more concentrated nectar or better thermal efficiency. Any of those things will boost your honey production. And what do we do? How do we achieve thermal efficiency in a hive? Thermal efficiency is the ratio of energy that actually evaporates water as compared to the amount of energy the bees produce. In other words, the difference between those two is the amount of energy that's just lost to the environment. Okay? Outside temperature is an issue. Insulation of the nest is an issue. Of those two, we can only affect one of them, okay? Unless you're going to migrate to Florida with your bees. Okay? So nest insulation in nature, if you look at a hollow tree, averages, from one study at least, of about 150 millimeters of thickness, wall thickness. Our hives average about 19 millimeters, so considerably thinner. Now, wood is not a great insulator, but it's pretty good. And with any insulator, the more you have of it, the more insulated qualities you have. And his point is here is that the difference between a natural hive and a man-made hive is about a 7 times difference in heat loss. Okay? So, why is this important? We've been talking about thermal efficiency. If you can improve thermal efficiency, you will essentially improve the performance of your hive. He said, if you think about a bee wing as a colony resource, which it actually is in a way, the more bees fly, the faster their wings wear out. As their wings wear out, the bees die because they're no longer useful as foragers. The only way to reproduce, to replace that resource, is for the hive to produce more foraging bees. Okay? So if the hive is using up resources to produce more foragers, okay, and those foragers are collecting less than they would have to if the hive were more efficient, you're actually stressing the hive and producing less honey. Okay? His solution to this is he points us to the polystyrene hive, okay? The styrofoam hive, and says, this has been used in the UK with some large commercial operations with great success. And this is essentially the culmination of his article, that polystyrene hives should be looked at carefully because of their greatly improved thermal efficiency. This is my editorial comments. Before you go out and burn all your woodenware and replace them with styrofoam beer coolers full of frames, keep in mind that thermal efficiency is one factor amongst a whole bunch of them. Okay? And we have to look at this as a complete issue. Polystyrene hives have been around for a while. They've been used very successfully in a lot of areas, but there are some things that we still don't understand very well. How much of an increase in thermal efficiency is there? Okay? If you go from 50% to 53%, it may not be worth it. Okay? If the hives cost more and don't last as long, would you be spending more money in hive materials than you'd be gaining in honey production? These are the types of questions that I think you have to be thinking about anytime somebody says, here's the problem, here's the answer, go do this thing. Okay? There's a lot more to it than that. It's kind of a big picture. But I think in general, just thinking about these types of issues, about what does it actually take for our hive to produce a kilo, a pound of honey, and what kinds of things can we be doing to improve their performance, those are good things for us to be thinking about as beekeepers. Any questions?
Can you go over that again?
No! Buy a copy of Bee Culture.
You know, the only person who understood your talk was my wife.
Hopefully me.
Scientist wife.
Yeah. I know the math gets a little cumbersome, but at the end of the day, I think the big takeaways from this are we can expect about an 8-to-1 conversion from nectar to honey. Anywhere from 4-to-1 to 8-to-1. And making sure that our hives are in good condition, or as good a condition as we can, is probably going to be to the bees' advantage. Yes?
Did your calculations take into account the rest of the hive going too?
No. It doesn't account losses to feeding brood or any of that. That would all be in addition. Yeah. Yes, Jeanette?
Did he mention anything about which flowers have a higher sugar content?
He did not. I refer you to the pollen. What's the book?
I will do some research.
Yeah, there's a book that Bastions carries, and it's been popular called Nectar Producing Plants.
Oh, okay, and it does give the,
Mhm.
okay.
It gives a sugar content, although it varies from region to region and from year to year.
And, yeah, I'm sure that the weather has a lot to do with it.
It does. Yes, Paul?
I would also think that the styrofoam hive would trap more moisture in the hive. It would make it harder to get rid of the water.
Theoretically, it shouldn't, because your hive is propolized on the inside anyway. It's essentially watertight on the inside. The moisture from the hive is sent out in vapor as the bees are circulating air. So theoretically, it shouldn't.
Should you consider putting styrofoam on the outside of your wood hive?
That's a question that came up when we were talking about this before, and my answer would be, you try it first and let me know how it works. I'm not a big fan of that idea, but you know what, there might be.
There's no point being attacked on the I
know.
It's just because of the energy non-efficiency.
I know.
Why would you not think of it?
I guess just because I haven't seen a controlled study where it was demonstrated to be effective, and it seems like such a simple thing. If it was just a matter of insulation, then every commercial beekeeper out there would be sawing up pink foam board and stapling it to the outside of the
I
hive.
think of only doing it on the north and west and maybe the top.
Report back to us on your
I'm
results.
gonna try it.
Yes.
You were talking about the factors involved in that. Would that mean that you should find better source of nectar as an additional?
I think that what caught my eye and along this line was I had hives in one yard this last summer, and the hives were booming. Had great populations. I had lots of bees flying. It looked like O'Hare out there in front of that thing, and they didn't produce squat. Okay, and it wasn't because it was a low population, and it wasn't because they weren't a good strain of bees. There's the same kind of bees I had in my other yards too. The only difference I could come up with was forage wasn't very good. They were putting a lot of energy into getting nectar that wasn't that high quality. And so I'm moving to someplace else.
Do you think adding supplemental either sugar or pollen patties or anything like that as a general rule?
Well, I think that would work if I was just raising bees to sell. But I'm producing honey. And so I can't, I don't want to be feeding them sugar and then harvesting honey off of it because then I'm selling people sugar.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Have you heard of the Aplary hive?
The what?
Aplary hive, polystyrene hive, insulated?
There are a number of polystyrene hives out there, yeah, and they're very popular in Europe especially. I know in Scandinavia they are the dominant hive types that's used because they say they overwinter very well there. But I've also heard people complain about their relative fragility, and they just don't hold up as well as woodenware does.
Yeah, I was doing spring cleaning on my hives today, and I'm wondering how I would ever do it with a styrofoam hive because the bees have put wax and propolis and everything all over the sides
Yeah.
to the extent that it becomes difficult to move flames up and down.
Right.
And so I sprayed that all out.
Did you look at the honest bee hives? They're the Greek ones that are the plastic with the styrofoam inside, and they clamp together, and so there's no propolis. I think it's called honest bee.
Sure. I mean, I think that one thing that hasn't changed in beekeeping since the turn of the last century is people coming out with the newest and most innovative hive. And just because it's new and innovative and one of a pack doesn't mean it might not be a great idea. I mean, Langstroth introduced his hive in the middle of that heyday when there were, 100 different patent beehives out there, and he was just one of many. And his happened to be the one that caught. So there may be some new designs out there that are, that address a lot of these things. I'm just not an early adopter. I will sit back and wait and let you all figure it out. Thank you very much.
Before we run this, we have a little trailer that we're going to show you about Mel Disselkoen, our speaker for June, and then we're going to take a break, raffle time, tickets and all that, and then we'll come back for our main presentation. But I do want to say, at last year's fall conference from Beekeepers of Indiana, it was Megan something from the University of Minnesota, and who's her? She's number 2 under Jennifer Berry or under somebody. Anyway, she said we can solve a lot of bee problems simply by planting more flowers. by planting more flowers. And it's not just about the amount of food that would be available to them by planting more flowers. It's about, they are doing research at University of Minnesota on bacteria that is left on the flowers from the bees landing and going up. And if there's more flowers for bees to land on, the disbursement of that bacteria is then greatly reduced. How many of you actually are planting things for your bees this year? I think I haven't done enough of that myself. I have a lot of flowers, and I kind of just go, oh, I have a lot of flowers. But especially here in the Midwest, where we are in the total amount of crop spraying that goes on through the whole Midwest. If you look at the overlay map of heaviest Roundup usage and crop spraying usage that travels down through the Midwest, and you overlay that with bee loss surveys, they are right on top of one another. So I would just greatly encourage you, plant more flowers. Let's find out what those heavy nectar producers are. But make an effort. And I know bees travel 2.5 miles, I get it. But we can certainly reduce a lot and increase a lot by just planting flowers.
I read an article last month that was talking about one of the stressors for the bees that people don't really think about is, yes, there might be tons of pollen and nectar they're bringing in, but if it's all from the same food source,
exactly,
they're not getting the variety of micronutrients that they need. They're
exactly.
eating nothing but broccoli every single day. Broccoli's healthy.
Well, or chicken nuggets and blue box macaroni.
Yeah, and
which I've raised children
something
successfully.
to remember too when you're planting flowers. Bees like flowers that they can land on. They like the flat things like daisies. Now they do go to other things, no question about it, but their preference would be something like that. Right now, what you see blooming a lot, oh, by the way, the dandelions are out.
Yeah.
And that's wonderful, bees love them. But you see a lot of daffodils. I have never, ever seen a bee on a daffodil. Daffodils generally are not propagated by pollination. They grow more bulbs. So they don't depend on bees. So spring flowers, crocus are good. Hyacinths are good. Yeah, things like that. But daffodils have their use. Nothing eats a daffodil. I have them in my pasture. The cattle won't touch them. Voles don't eat them. Chipmunks don't eat them. Deer don't eat them. Nothing eats them, which I suspect is why bees don't eat them. The pollen probably takes off.
Right. Yeah. All right, so let's work on planting more flowers. We're going to show a short clip about Melvin.
Hey, in the spring, when you do wave queen cells, how open? Okay, that's different than everybody in different locations. And in Michigan, our swarming starts on May 10th. Okay, always do your pulling the old queen out 1 week before swarming actually starts in their area. Okay, 1 week. Because you've got to be consistent with nature. If you do it too quick, you're not going to have sex with your drones 14 days or so later, 15 or that birds start flying. They have to have sex with your drones, otherwise you're not going to get a queen. But if you wait too long, that hive will swarm, and then you have bees all year, and then you have them swarm out, and then you lost your production that year. So you can't wait until a beekeeper tonight. And I don't know if I've ever had a swarm in probably the last 30 years. I've had mating like swarms, and that's completely different thing. But I'm talking about an overwinter queen. I just will not allow. Okay? I'm not going to keep bees all year, and live through the winter, and then lose them because we have that hive will swarm.
Okay, who would like to prevent their hives from swarming? I know I would. Is that it?
Just the teaser.
Right, exactly. So he is our speaker June 15th for our Sustainable Apiary Day. Are we taking money today? Yes, we are. So let's take a 5-minute break, 5 raffle tickets, and then we're coming back for our main presentation. Yeah, that too.
So this is, this box is, has students in it that were not affected. So you lose some of them. I lose about 10% behind this. And so this box died out. And so we replaced it. We restocked this box with nukes from other nukes in another yard. So on June 30th, we started these 2 nukes. And we gave them daughters of breeder queen 48. And that was it. So 16 days later, I came back, and the queens were laying. And I gave them their second box with foundation in it. Actually, I moved the foam out of the middle of this box against the divider and put a foundation in its slot and moved that foam will brood up to entice the bees to come up and work on the foundation. Because sometimes bees don't see foundation above them as expansion room, and they'll swarm. Even though there's foundation that they could draw, they don't see it as expansion room, and they swarm. And having that brood against the foundation just entices them to start drawing it out right off. So this colony was started on the 30th of June. The queen was checked on the 16th of July. When I came back on the 25th of July, I didn't really like the strength of this one. So I gave it a frame of brood. Must be I took a frame of brood out of the strong one and gave it to this one. Then on the 15th of August, I took out the remainder of the foundation and gave it comb back. And 14 days later, 2 weeks later, everything, all the brood had started to hatch. They were feeling crowded, so there were cells with eggs, cups with eggs. So I removed a frame of brood and honey and gave her a comb. Probably in about slot 2 right here, so that she would start to lay it. So that was, they're bearding outside on a full day, which means they're absolutely packed with bees. I'll bet you the space between the inner cover and the outer cover is packed with bees also. So if I was worried about this colony, if we were on a good flow right now, I'd have to do something about this colony. I couldn't leave it like this because they swarm. But we're at the end of this flow now, and we're starting to get cooler nights. Tomorrow night's supposed to be in the 40s. The goldenrod flow is going by, and so I don't expect there to be any more cups of eggs or any jelly in this nuke. But you know, I can check it easily enough. All I have to do is tip up the bottom super. Right away, I'm weighing this. I'm picking up how much does this thing weigh. It's got some nice weight to it. This one is heavier than the first one we looked at. So I'm looking underneath for cups with eggs, and sure enough, I see that they're starting something right here. And so here's one. See this cup with jelly in it. This is starting queen cells. So that means I have to come back here and look at the ones that were, maybe that has queen cells started last time, or that have beards on them like this one does, and rearrange these, readjust these. So this is going to have to be in the next couple days. I'll come back through, and any of these, all my nuke yards, I've got about 10 nuke yards, and I'll try to look at the ones that have beards and try to adjust that. I may have to take away a frame of brood and give it to somebody and put an empty comb in the middle of her brood nest so she has somewhere to lay. See if I can't shut off this swarming impulse that they've got going now. But in order to do that, what I will do is I will take the hole on the other stuff here so the queens can't go back and forth. And it's pretty tough to see queen cells when there's this many bees. So what you really need to do is shake the bees off, shake most of the bees off, and you can see where they're starting their queen cells. Now, you obviously want to know did the colony swarm. If you cut the queen cells out and the colony's already swarming, you just kill the colony because there's no queen.
this thing has such a big beard and such a high population, obviously it didn't swarm. But the kids supersede. And some colonies will kill the queen early in the supersedure when there's only queen cells this old. So how do you know? You look for a clone of brood like this one, where it's starting to emerge. See, this brood right in here is emerging. See, you can sort of see the pattern, and it's emerging out here like this. And you look at this newly emerged brood that's emerged within the last few hours, and look for eggs. And sure enough, there are eggs in those cells. So I'm confident that this queen is not been replaced. They didn't supersede her. They're just they're getting ready to swarm. So I have to remove every one of these. Every queen cell has to be removed. If you leave as much as a cup with an egg, they'll probably go. And these guys may even start again now. So I don't have any queens, any combs with it right now. So I'll have to come back. It's just got an enormous amount of brood. And this queen, I mean, if you can see that pattern in there, the open brood pattern, I don't know if you got the light right. It's just an amazing pattern. She's a laying machine. These are hard queens to keep in the hives. They just fill everything up with brood. Right, that's a fantastic queen. Couldn't really ask for much more. Except I wish there weren't any swarm cells, so now I have to deal with this column. Here's the column of brood. So, you know, this is the frame of brood that the empty column that I put in there the other day. When I came here and there were stuffed with eggs. And I added this column, and she didn't lay it. They filled it up with nectar. So I'll probably move this out of the center of the brood nest and maybe move it to the outside and put her brood back in there. I'll come back here tomorrow with some combs, possibly take this frame of honey away from them, and put back an empty comb that she can maybe lay in. So I just removed the queen cells. But that's only going to buy me a little bit of time. I need to come back in here and maybe remove this comb. It's all nectar. And give her an empty comb. And hopefully that'll take care of it this time. You know, it didn't literally take care of it last time. Mine was at the 29th. The 20 and 30 days, that's September, April, June, and November, 31 days. So that's 2 days, and today's 4. That's only 6 days ago. And they started it. With the temperature dropping now, and we're getting nice in the 40s, and the golden hour going by, hopefully I don't have to do this again. But it's something that requires persistence.
I was thinking there's more stuff to chunk.
I think what we're going to do is just question and answer, just a little forum. We've got a lot of experienced beekeepers here, and ask questions and see if we can already got questions.
Can you translate the bill that went through the Senate on what you need to do to have onions there?
Jim?
I know that I said this the last meeting, and I promise that we will have a presentation ready by the time we meet again, which will be in May.
Isn't it in the newsletter that just came out?
It is.
Is it the
I
newsletter?
haven't gotten the
The
newsletter yet.
newsletter just came yesterday or day before yesterday, and it is very detailed, and it's.
Read that.
They actually came up with a pretty good solution. The first go around that I guess I heard about wasn't as clear as what is
Because you listen to your staff.
That's true. Yeah. But I think they came up with a good workaround for most beekeepers.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a reasonable approach, right? You remember the TBI?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the thing that I read that came out, what, 3 weeks ago, it sounded like you needed a dedicated.
You do not.
Okay.
You do not. So that's a key element of all of this that we had the discussions with the State Board of Health. You do not have to have a separate facility, except for the moment when you're bottling. and then you can use your existing kitchen and call it separate. It works. It works. Read the article in the newsletter, honestly, and we will probably have some discussions about this during the next month.
I read it and I'm more confused than I ever was.
Well, then you make sure to come next month and we'll explain it
And
again.
I'll tell you what, will you please invite Robert Duffy to this meeting?
Why?
Because he's the man that's causing the problem at the state fair.
Oh.
He's in charge of the state fair, and he says, you gotta be licensed.
Well, I think it's the state health department.
You will be licensed. That's the point. That's the whole point of this project.
It wasn't Robert.
You have to be
I
licensed.
think Robert was the messenger.
Yeah.
I think it was a state. Essentially, and I may be wrong, but they're basically giving you a pass. So you are following the wholesale rule, so you have to get registered as a wholesale. Normally a wholesale, you have to have a separate facility, a commercial kitchen, but they're giving you a pass. They're basically saying when you're doing it, your kitchen would be a wholesale kitchen at that moment.
Right.
Registered with who?
The Indiana State Department of Health.
Okay, I am registered, and I got a license from my local board of health
Then you don't need it.
to process my honey.
Then you're fine. This is for people who don't have that.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's different. But essentially what the State Board of Health, I mean, Barry has explained it correctly, I'm going to go on to talk more about it, I guess. But, I mean, the essence of what they're doing is look, you register with the State Board of Health as a wholesale food producer, is that right?
Yeah.
Doesn't cost anything, okay? Doesn't cost anything to get the registration. And the commercial kitchen that you need to produce your food, they will allow us to declare our home kitchens to be a commercial kitchen for the period of time that we're bottling honey. All that means is you can't do other things normally in your kitchen.
You can't have your pets in there.
Right.
You
Keep
can't.
the dogs out, you can't litter box.
Be cooking other food for any other events.
I thought it had to be closed off. It
No.
has to be enclosed.
Yes. Yes. I mean, yes, you have to have a door, essentially. But you can put plastic on it, and that's a door. I mean, so it's, right. Yeah. So
But
anyway.
anyway, so take a look at it. I think we're going to try and get more people for a presentation for that. So, yeah.
I have a question about mold in your hives. I had some winter patties that were in there, and the winter patties got mold on the end of it, and then the bees kind of picked that off, and there's mold now on the inside of the box. The French cheese on it.
I mean, honestly, my opinion, and people may have some others, is I don't pay any attention to mold. They just clean it all up, and
I scraped it, you know, with my hive tool.
I put moldy, you know, if I had some wet comb and I put it in a tub and forgot about it for a little bit, and I take it out and oh my, look at that thing, it's all wet and moldy. I just take it back in the hive and they clean it all up. So, I mean, that's what I do. I don't know if anybody else has any, I don't get that concerned about it.
So the water discoloration you get on the inside of your hive is no big deal.
I don't think, you know.
I noticed when we got in today, the inner covers was ripples and warts.
Well, that's not, because you're getting all that moisture over the winter.
Yeah.
You're getting all that moisture building up, it hits your inner cover, so you get some mold in there, and you get, sometimes your plywood starts to get a little ripply.
Right.
And
No big deal.
If it bothers you, bleach it.
Most of these don't seem to care.
Do you have to have it in a cover?
Don't have to.
You don't have to, just, you know, it kind of depends what you want. Some people just use a piece of a sack for an inner cover. Some people use a piece of plywood for an inner cover.
I've seen people use that, it's almost like a foil paper. It's like a corrugated foil paper.
Yeah.
Some of the Canadian commercial beekeepers that use that, they just cut a spot in it so the bees can get through to it.
I've also seen in the South and North Carolina, they have screen inner covers.
I use, down south at our farm, I use some screen inner covers.
So it's like,
Particularly in the summer when it's really hot.
Yeah, and
I'll put
then
it-
there's also plexi inner covers. So there's all varieties, and shop around, and whatever works for you.
The whole goal is just so they don't glue the outer cover down.
Well, I think so, but also when you crack that lid, you don't have 2 billion, you know, it kind of gives you a moment to get it together.
So they told you what they were, different fabrication options. Inner covers are just convenient.
Yeah.
Because you can pop the top and you have a tiny little hole that you can puff smoke into, versus if you have a rock and a rolling hive and you pop the top and they all come out. And then if you're going to be feeding, then it's just easy to open it, get the jars in, and close it up without having a lock. So it's a convenience.
One of the advantages with the inner cover is it has a little tiny space that goes above your frame. And it's set on there, and therefore usually the bee will hardly attach that to your inner cover. Without an inner cover, you put your lid down on, and the bees are going to attach it. You will lift the lid off, a bunch of your frames are coming out with it. So that's the purpose of an inner cover, to keep the bees from sticking the frame.
The film was on, I think the clip was on spring management, swarms. Any questions on the clip, the film or anything?
That's a question. That person.
I also have a question. I have some honeysuckers that are damaged from wax moths. Do you give them the damaged frames back and hope they fix the damage? No, you just give them all to pull out?
They'll ignore it. I always redo mine.
Yeah, I mean, I put damaged frames back in.
I freeze them first.
Yeah, I freeze and make sure there's no, get all bugs off of them. I stick it back in, and sometimes they'll ignore them, sometimes they'll put it back out.
Depends on how much damage.
Is it on wax foundation or is it on plastic foundation?
It's on wax. And some of the little wires, stick it out.
I mean, I use plastic, so I mean.
I don't know that they ever close the holes. So like,
no, I don't.
Yeah, I have not, in my limited history and experience, because I use wax foundation because that's what normal people do. But like if there's a hole popped through, I have never seen them close the hole. They just go, oh look, here's a convenient way to get from A to B rather than to go up, over, and down. So it just becomes part of the highway. In my limited experience.
I'm just, trying to get the supers ready to go. And I just, a lot of them got damaged. 3 of them got damaged. 3 of the 4 I had got damaged. So I didn't know if I should pitch them
Well, you don't have to redo them.
Just put the new wax foundation in. Clean them up and put new wax foundation.
I don't know how to do it because it's got the little tiny wires that run through this.
They come that way. The wax foundation comes with wires that run perpendicular.
So
you just buy new inserts?
So if you're buying like Kelly sells the pre-wired wax foundation. Yeah, so they're kind of a pain to put in because you gotta get them all cleaned up so you can slide the foundation. Is it the slot on top where you slide the wax foundation in?
I don't even know.
Okay.
I don't
You
think
need
so.
to bring one
I
next
think
time.
that they're flat on the top.
It could be a wedge top. It could be, There's like, switch the plastic, you're out of trouble. I switched the plastic because of those problems. I mean, I have a wax mouse problem. I just scrape off and then I just re-wax my foundation and snap it back in.
Now notice he said re-wax the foundation. So when you have plastic foundation, even though they say it's wax coated, and it's not enough. And so you need to melt some wax and paint it off. Right?
It helps. It helps. It'll work.
You don't have to, it helps.
It helps.
If you have a hive that has all wax foundation, you're starting a new one, an all plastic foundation. If you're starting a new hive and you put all plastic foundation in there, in my limited experience, you don't have to re-wax it. But.
So that's all you're giving them?
I'm sorry?
So that's all you're giving them? They don't have any choice?
That's right, they don't have any choice, and they will adapt to it. But if you have a hive that has some wax foundation, and you want to put some plastic in there, you've got better wax it, or they're going to ignore it.
I haven't had much luck mixing wax with plastic.
I do it all the time, but it's well waxed.
Yeah, it seems like I don't do as well doing that, so that's mine are all plastic, and they don't have a choice. They seem to do just fine. Any other questions on spring management?
Leftover candy board. What do you do with it? You save it, you wrap it up?
You know, I save mine. I just put them in a trash bag and put them up on the shelf in the barn. Now sometimes cockroaches and stuff on them, or bees get to them, but they're fine. I mean, some people melt them down, but when I make a candy board, first I put this little newspaper down. So when if I melt it down, I got newspaper floating around everywhere. So I just save them and then just add more sugar to them in the fall.
And I've never had a problem getting it off the wax paper that I put in the bottom line. So I just throw it all in a Ziploc bag, and then when I have to make sugar syrup in the fall, I just use that.
Use wax paper.
Yeah.
Cheap. I know.
And lazy.
But it is a good, it's a way that you can make up some syrup for the spring.
Sure.
Or fall. Yeah, or fall.
One thing I'm doing right now is I consider myself more of a bee getter than I am a beekeeper. And I have some hives here in Indiana, and I have some in Louisiana. I hauled them down last October, went down in March and checked them. I've lost a few of them. First week of May, I planned on the weekend of May, I'm going down and get them, bring them back to Indiana. I had some friends that had 40 acres, and they wanted to.
And a mule?
Yeah, we got 40 acres and a mule. And they wanted to get in this chicken, duck, organic thing I did. And they wanted some meat. So I took them down there. They've been down there all winter. And about 4 days after I come back home, the azalea flowers broke out, and they sent me pictures down there. And she said, these bees are just going nuts. So I'm looking to have some strong hives when I bring them back. One thing that I've been doing bees about 8 years. And I've had my good years, my bad years, and whatever. But and thanks to guys like Dave over there, attending these beekeeper meetings and picking up some stuff. Right now, everybody's here talking about spring management. What I'm looking at right now, I'm looking at the bees and how I'm going to have what kind of bees in 2020. That's what I'm looking at right now. I'm not even concerned with what I got in 2019 because this is what I already have. And at this point, there's not much I can do about it. But I can say, well, okay, this is a strong hive, that's a strong hive. When the flow gets in here and all this stuff, and this thing really builds up, am I going to split off this and make me some new flavor in the summer, over winter some, so next winter I have some, next spring I have some bees. I went through a couple of years where I bought 20 packages at one time, and I lost all 20. Yeah, and it really hurts in the pocketbook when you do that, you know. But I love bees, and I want to get into it like that. And I've had to attend a lot of seminars and a lot of times to figure out, you just don't go get bees, put them in a box, and hope they make honey, and then you close them up for the winter. There's a lot of stuff you have to study, and there's a lot of things you have to know and plan ahead in order to have a sustainable apiary. So, I think I'm on a lot better track now than I was.
Yep, you have a question? Yes, sir.
Are you doing any splits yet, or how quickly are you doing splits?
I'm doing splits down south, and I think you're right in the time frame. There's drone room. You got to be careful. I mean, you could have some cold, wet time, or if you're trying to make queens. I think some people have some commercial queens that are available. They're not Indiana queens. don't think anybody's making Indiana queens yet, but.
Reeves has. Gary Reeves has.
Oh, they're Indiana queens? They're made it already in Indiana. That would be.
Queen cells.
It's, I mean, to me, now I'm not saying people aren't doing it, it's just, you're on the early side, 17th of April, to have mated queens in Indiana, but, I mean, if you're seeing drones and drone brood, by the time the queen is ready for her mating flight, well, you're 20 days down the road, you know.
Yeah, I saw lots of drones and lots of drone brood today. So I went ahead and did a split because I had a queenless hive.
My early splits, I buy queens for my early, I want to do some early splits. Now my May splits, and those are Indiana queens I do. But my early, I buy some. I buy a few queens for that. But I think you're just on the start of it here to do splits.
Very supposed to be raising your own queens.
I did.
You just didn't want
For my early splits. Now from my May and June splits, those are mine. Yes, sir.
Saturday, I watched these 5 breaths for 10-15 minutes march out of flying out from the hive. Was that in a swarm? Was that watching them swarming away, or?
What time of day?
It was like 3:30, 4, 5.
Probably your afternoon orientation flight.
Really? I've never seen them just fly up and go out that front and then.
That time, I'm just guessing. I'm guessing that time of day. Lots of times they get an afternoon orientation flight, and they'll come out, and those are sometimes the first flight they've had, and they'll come out. Sometimes it almost looks like a swarm, and you'll get a lot of bees in the late afternoon doing their orientation flight. And they'll come up and they'll do the spiral.
So what's an orientation flight?
For the bees that are graduating to be field bees, they've never been outside the hive. So this is their opportunity to come out and see the world. And I'm not saying, I mean, I'm not.
They'll do this as a cluster, as a group?
No.
They won't do it as a cluster, but you'll see a lot of bees outside the hive late afternoon.
There's a cloud of bees flying around. They're just marking their territory in their mind as this is where my hive is. So they know how to get back again.
Yeah, that's why you see so many. Well, you know, the queen's been laying, and she laid all them on one day. You got that many hatching at once. So you've got different generations coming out. And they're familiarizing themselves with the landscape and the landmarks. Oh, there's a big tree over here. Look, there's a fire hydrant. Look. And each time they fly, they go a little farther, a little farther, a little farther, and eventually they know where they are. And then they can fly 3 miles and forward and find a way back.
And then the difficult thing to me to determine, because I'm talking to people who are doing a while ago, is determine between an orientation flight and robbing going on. Out in front of your hive. Is this an orientation flight, or these bees come from somewhere else and they're robbing this hive out?
If they're coming in and going back in the same hive, they're coming out and going in the same hive, it's not robbing. If they're coming from this hive, what's that one?
Well, I try to explain to people like, if you break down and you take one frame and they draw out the comb, okay, and there's 1,924 spaces on each side of that comb. A queen, a good laying queen, will lay a softball size on that frame, approximately about 1,500 to 1,600 eggs in one day. And then you go the other side, whatever. So 21 days from the time she started laying, your hive should start producing the amount of bees. So then probably for the next 30 days, your hive will increase by, say, 1,500 to 1,600 bees per day. So you get a 3-pound pack, you start in spring, maybe there's 8,000 to 9,000 bees and a queen in this box. You get a good laying queen, she gets going. By mid-June, late June, you might have 60,000 bees in this box that you're producing that. And just like right now, we went out here and we went through the apiary, and everything looks fine out here. But compared to what On being in boxes, there's nothing in them boxes right now. If you come back here in 2 months, and you come to this same area.
Everybody got supers on? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're gonna be supered up. Yeah,
You guys got supers on, everybody? Yeah. Dandelions are blooming, trees are blooming.
yeah, I don't have any supers on mine yet.
You know, kind of just touching on Jim's talk a little bit, and I don't remember the person that saw the presentation, and talked about the general tendency for people to under-super. You know, Jim's talked about the volume of nectar coming in, so people put, you know, think, well, maybe I'll get a super of honey, so they put a super on. Well, that's not enough. You probably need to put 3 supers on. So there's a tendency for a lot of beekeepers to not put enough supers on to store the volume of nectar that's coming in. That won't necessarily mean you're going to get 3 supers of honey, but they're bringing in, particularly when the flow is on, they bring in a huge amount of nectar, and they got to have a place to put it. Now they'll consume part of it, and then they're gonna make honey out of part of it. But
How soon are you putting them on?
it should be on. It should be on. Yeah, it should be on. It should have been.
They don't have nowhere to put it, they're not gonna bring it in.
Yeah.
Should we be feeding them also or no?
I'm saying no. There's stuff out there. I mean, if you have a real weak hive and you need to nurse it along a little bit, one if it's real weak right now, you probably need to be thinking about a queen. But I don't necessarily think in the middle of April you need to be feeding. But there was a question first over here. Yes.
Did you put all 3 supers on at one time?
I usually do. Yeah.
But
80%
add one, 80% add one. I mean, Gary, you don't have time to.
Yeah, I put plenty on just to give them.
I think I recommend you put your supers on 2 at a time.
Are they drawn out supers or non-drawn out supers?
Either way.
It's whatever you have in the garage.
And when the flow's on, they want to make wax too. Don't forget that they're drawn.
Barry, just to clarify, so
Yes.
new hive that you just started, like a package you could just be putting in like next week.
Yes.
You want to feed that.
That's a good point. Yes. If you people that have bought packages and things, and if you're trying to draw comb on a new hive, yeah, probably feeding.
But you shouldn't feed if you have supers on, correct?
If you have drawn comb and you're trying to make honey, yeah, you probably shouldn't. Or you just have sugar water.
You really want to get your packages or your new started and check, and you want about 80% of your frames that have been drawn out before, with brood in, before you ever consider putting super. You got your numbers built up before you can go out to the other stuff. At least that's my thoughts.
They don't ever go to the edges though.
Well, some do, some do.
I would force them to go to the edges, take those frames that are on the edges and move them in, and move the ones that are filled out.
Right.
You mean they don't draw the ones on the outside? Yeah, just move them in so they don't have any choice but to.
Take them and put them in the middle.
Yeah.
If you got a nuke that went through the winter and you want to put it in a full-size box, you put it in, if you got drawn comb, can you put it in 2 boxes or 1?
He's 1 deep or 2. Would you move a 5-frame nuke?
I would move a 5-frame nuke into a single deep. Let it build up. Keep an eye on it. When you look like you got 7 or 8 frames of bees, then you can put your other deep on. But you don't need to give them that much room for a 5-frame nuke starting off. 5-frame nuke, you got a couple frames of honey. You got 2.5 frames of brood in there. They don't need 20 frames. They don't need that much room right away. Put them in a single bead.
To do that though?
They don't like to have that much room. I don't know. I mean,
More room to defend.
They'll go up, There won't be enough bees, like you said, there won't be enough bees to watch out for wax moths and
Wax moths.
hive beetles, our favorite animals, and
We're a little early for wax moths right now, but not, this warm weather keeps going, we won't be.
I saw some wax on.
Did you?
he said he puts a whole cluster of hive beetles.
I've seen hive beetles already.
One thing that this club's pretty blessed with is we have some pretty good, dependable vendors that we are hooked up with. That, you know, but I see these nightmares on the internet all day long, and if any of you have purchased a nuke off somebody, I don't care who you got it from, but if you get a nuke and you get that nuke and that queen's in a cage, you need to call that guy and get your money back. That's not a nuke. If that queen's in a cage, that ain't no nuke. But that stuff is going on out there right now. That means that guy's pulls the frame out of a hive, he threw him in a nuke, he had a queen, put it in a cage, put the lid on, sold it to you, and they're even telling people, well, now don't open that up for 20 days. You can get schemed in this business.
Questions?
Here. When we add the queen strings. Queen excluders? Yeah. You know, some people like them, some people don't. I mean, I use them sometime later in the summer if I got a queen that just won't stay, you know, just keep coming up in my honey supers. Generally, I don't like to use them, but I will some. So I guess it's kind of a...
If you want to use them, you can use them whenever. Just as long as the queen is where her food is.
My flip answer would be never, and I'd rather spend that money on good bourbon.
I got one. Unlike Barry, sometimes the queen stays down, you don't have to worry about putting the queen excluder. Sometimes you got that queen that will go up there no matter what you do.
Because they don't read the book.
So what I do, there's two things I do. What I do, if I catch a queen up in the honey super, I will find her, I will put her down. Put her down where she belongs. Then I'll put a queen excluder in that. And of course the nurse bees will continue taking care of that brood, but when it hatches out, there's bee oils in that. And they'll fill it up with honey. And another thing that I may do is sometimes you're worried about the queen going up there at all, but you've got stuff up there, and sometimes the bees will go up there. So I won't put a queen excluder in that, so I know the bees are working that. When I see them in there, they've got nectar in there, then I'll put the queen excluder in. After I make sure.
Yeah, something I do early that I don't know if it's a smart thing to do or not, but in the springtime, like right now, if I have a queen that won't stay down, and I know the flow's coming on, and they're going to want to draw wax, I'll put an undrawn super right above the bee. So there's no cone for her to go up on. And maybe that'll keep her down there for a week or 10 days until they start drawing that out. Maybe she'll stay down there. I don't like using queen excluders, I don't have to. If you're drawing wax out, I don't think queen excluders are good. But sometimes, usually it's just because I've got honey supers on, and I'll go and I'm thinking, I'm going to have a bunch of honey, and I've got brood all through my honey supers. So I find her and I put her down below, and I'll put a queen excluder on. So.
To me, a queen excluder is a honey reducer.
See, I haven't found that. I mean, some hives, yeah, some hives, no. So I don't think you can just automatically say that the queen excluders will keep them. If you have drawn comb up there and the flow's on, they're going to make honey. They're going to, they're not going to not make honey.
But I'm wearing my wings out going through all that metal.
So that was a very provocative question, but we will end with.
Okay.
Are we done?
We're done.
All right.
Yeah, I would say not to forget that we do have a Facebook page, and if there are more questions or things that you're interested in, put some stuff on the Facebook page and
go make splits.
Keep discussing. Yeah. Thank you for your questions.
Auction.
Auction.
Oh, raffle.